3 days of inspiration, content, and connections with fellow executive women at leading retailers and brands. You can't miss the 2021 Women in Retail Leadership Summit. Connect with and learn from inspirational women leaders at this exclusive boutique event from October 11th to the 13th. The safety of our attendees is our number one priority. Go to womeninretailsummit.com for our full event safety plan and to register to attend. We can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail, and I am joined on today's show by Eric Bjorling, who is the Director of Brand and Marketing at Trek Bikes. Eric and I are going to be discussing the release of Trek's sustainability report, as well as the establishment of its new Trek Foundation. So thanks for joining me today, Eric.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So as I noted, in 2020, Trek conducted its first emissions audit and to better really understand its impact and build a plan to become a more conscious and sustainable global citizen. Can you tell us a little bit about that audit and what the company learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I should start by saying, as a bike company, we feel like we were in a really good spot as far as our impact on the environment, what we could do to help with the global climate crisis. But at the same time, we also recognize that as a manufacturer and as a company with normal operating procedures, we have a footprint as well. And we had never really taken the time to understand exactly what that footprint was and where we can affect that. So in 2020, which is an interesting year to do this kind of survey and study, it actually goes back all the way to 2019. These surveys take a very long time to complete because you need almost a full year of operations and to get an accurate picture. We said, let's find out where our carbon emissions are coming from. What is it that we can do so that we can actually build a plan? We had not necessarily had a formalized plan and commitment as far as what we could do. And we had seen a lot of progress being made in different areas of carbon reduction, and we didn't know where to even start. So we just said, let's start with understanding the beginning. What is our carbon contribution and where does it come from so that we can start building the plan to address that?
Perfect. So that's a good overview of the audit that you conducted. I'm interested then in, you get this information, you collect this data. As a result, Trek has produced a sustainability report, which I mentioned in the opening, that outlined 10 steps that the company was going to take to become a more sustainable business. So one, can you talk about what those steps are? And then two, how they can kind of help the end goal of making Trek a more sustainable organization?
So what the report revealed to us was that there's a number of different places that we produce carbon, and it's in the manufacturing sector. And to really get an accurate picture of that, we took 4 key products and we chose them based upon the number of products that we create, so that it's kind of paints an overall baseline for us. So it was a carbon fiber road bike. It was a aluminum hardtail mountain bike, very common bike that covers hybrids and all sorts of other things. An electric bike, which is a fast emerging category, and it has its own unique procedures. And then you have a full suspension mountain bike, which is another large key category for us. And every single one of those bikes has different parts, pieces, manufacturing processes, materials. And so we took a look at that to understand what our manufacturing penalty would look like. And that's kind of a baseline. And then from then we took a look at, okay, that's manufacturing. That's actually our big producing bikes is going to be probably our single largest. But aside from that, because we all know that the production of materials and things is going to have a carbon need to it. Where is the operational stuff? Where are the other things that we can put processes into to address, and what is that lowest hanging fruit for us? And what we found there is we took a look at transportation. We took a look at actually our facilities. We took a look at commuting, employee behavior, and then we took a look at a number of different pieces regarding water usage throughout just our normal procedures. And I would say it was amazing what actually came up from that and what we actually thought where we would come out, because we knew that manufacturing would be number one,
yeah,
the biggest opportunity. But then we thought, keeping the lights on and just managing facilities would actually be probably our next biggest. What we actually found out was the next thing after you build the thing is actually transporting the thing. So our biggest operational piece by like a long shot is in the transportation of our products from the point of manufacturer to wholesale, to retail, to the consumer. And we found that we were using a fair bit of air freight. And then we thought, well, what's the difference between air freight and ocean freight? Well, air freight has a much higher carbon penalty. It just emits so much more CO2 into the air than ocean freight. Ocean freight is a little bit slower, but it's highly more efficient to transport a large number of products. So that was where we really started to say, okay, let's break down all of these places and let's come up with a plan that addresses every one of those. And really, so when you take a look at our plan, like number 10 is reduce carbon dioxide air freight by a dramatic percent. So what we're taking a look at is if we can do this within 3 years, if we can reduce our need to ship product by using air by 75% within 3 years, well, we can save, that's a massive amount of carbon that we're not emitting. And then on the other transportation side, okay, that's just us to wholesale. What's the next step in that journey? The next step is wholesale to retail. And so we took a look at what can we do there? What we found is actually we were shipping far too many products in an inefficient way to different places of the globe. So what we could do is we could actually consolidate shipments. If we just changed a few processes in the way that we process orders for our retailers, well, then we can actually bundle them and send them in a much more efficient way and send much more product out in fewer shipments. So we're actually putting less trucks on the road. And then the next thing would be, what is it about those facilities? The facilities we thought that were going to be creating so much CO2 actually were very low amounts of CO2. And what we can actually do there is that's a much easier way for us to address. There's so many alternative energy sources that are available to companies and individuals now. Well, we just needed to make the commitment and extend our use of renewable energy that we use here in Wisconsin at our headquarters across all of our own facilities. And that was actually a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, those are some great examples. And I would imagine that, the example of identifying the air freight shipments that you were used to be doing and then shifting them over to ocean freighters. You talked about the benefit, the savings in terms of the carbon emissions. But I would imagine, even though it might be a slightly slower mode of transportation, much more efficient in terms of the amount of products you can fit in, there probably was financial cost savings there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, shipping by air is exponentially more expensive. Yeah. Now, the big trade-off is it's speed to market. It is the absolute fastest way that possible that we can get our products into the marketplace. But if we can put some processes way further upstream, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this journey for us is it's been incredible to see the entire company rally behind this cause. We thought that we might have to drag a few people just because we're interrupting processes, we're changing the way that people do things. I'd say every single person that we've worked on with this throughout the company has been, game on. Like let's just do what we need to do the right thing here.
Yeah.
It's really and so what we're doing, and it's going to take us a little bit longer to ship those things. So by using more ocean freight, but if we can actually address that now, so that we have a 3-year plan, so that in 3 years we're using 75% less air freight, but we've got the processes in place that we're not seeing an interruption in any kind of business procedures that we need to do to be successful. Well, then that's the way that we can make this work.
Yeah. Is this all occurring, Eric, as you're talking? I'm thinking about just the growth that we've seen in the kind of outdoor sports during the pandemic and outdoor activities, biking and cycling being one of them. I can imagine there's the kind of you're conducting this sustainability audit and study and putting these steps into place, and during the backdrop of what is probably a boom time for the company as more and more people are looking to spend time outdoors and do things such as biking.
Absolutely. It's been an interesting thing for us because it's presented enormous opportunity for us to learn and continue to grow and continue to find new ways of doing things. But it's also presented a number of different challenges because the supply chain disruptions, not just in cycling, but throughout consumer goods has been kind of an incredible thing for companies and industries to manage. And it is going to force you into a position where you're like, well, we are already so delayed or we're already so backed up. It might be much more attractive for us to go back to those old ways of, well, we'll just put this stuff on a plane and get it to the customer as fast as we can. But if we've made this commitment, those are hard decisions that we have to make, and that we are making every single day to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to what we've committed to here. And it's not going to be a straight line. I think that's another thing about it, and that we're learning. There's going to be ups and downs. But the rise in demand for cycling has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest pieces of our plan is actually to help more people use the bike for more reasons. That's actually, if you take a look at the whole thing, we realized that actually Trek's greatest contribution to fighting the global climate crisis would be just to do whatever we can to help people use bikes more often throughout their day. And the pandemic has given us an opportunity to get more people on bikes and for more people to return to cycling, not just for recreation, which has been a big percentage of it, but also rethinking transportation and rethinking public health and rethinking the way they move from one place to another. And in that, I would say it's presented one of the biggest opportunities I think we have as an industry to help people live more sustainable lives and not just run just sustainable companies.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's really obviously an interesting time for not just for the world and so many different industries, but your particular vertical, and an interesting time for Trek bikes. I did want to dig into a little bit. You talked about kind of, you went into this process thinking, we might have to twist some arms and pull some people along that everyone might not be on board, just because, people get ingrained in the way they do things and some things might have to change. But, fortunately, you've seen that really hasn't been the case. So I'm interested kind of in the internal process at Trek for conducting this audit, putting out the sustainability report, including that 10-step process. Tell us a little about kind of the inner workings there. Who were the stakeholders involved? Kind of what was the timeline you were looking at, how you're communicating that plan and implementing it across the organization. A lot of different parts. I imagine there are a lot of different teams and a lot of different people that are contributing here.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting story for us. The benefit that my team had, and I'm blessed and honored to work with an incredibly talented group of people who put this together. The report really is the result of a number of different people throughout the company, but chiefly our senior leadership making the commitment and deciding that this was not just something that was going to happen in the packaging department. This was not just something that we were going to do in facilities management, that we needed, that we had reached a point where we can't not do this. We cannot not do something. And, at the beginning of the report, we lead off actually with our president, John, telling a story about, he watched a film that really shook him. And it was actually, it's a film about the history of NASA, but really it actually dovetails really interestingly into essentially the brutal honesty and the reality of what we're facing as a planet and as a people. He got in touch with Rory Kennedy, the documentarian, and had some questions, and it really shook him to his core. And that moment was seminal for us as a company to really get off of the bench and get into the game and start doing something. So I would say for us, and my recommendation to anybody out there listening that wants to do this, it has to come from the top down. So many things became so much easier knowing that John was fully on board and knowing that our entire senior leadership from the vice president level down was ready to make some significant changes. And then the next step was really, after this was a go project, it was, okay, we need to find out what we don't know. And that was really the beginning of the emissions study. Found a great third party, WAP Consulting. I highly recommend them if anybody out there is wondering where you can start. I think they were great for us to really peel back the layers of what we were doing and kind of like give us some great feedback on those emissions. And then from then it was, okay, we're going to find that out. Then we're going to attack this thing from whatever the report is and whatever it says. We are going to start building a plan. And then it was just getting our arms around. We found that there were a number of people and a number of departments in the building and spread throughout the 17 offices we operate throughout the world that were already doing interesting work and doing meaningful work in this. They just didn't have necessarily a North Star or a plan to wrap themselves and activate their teams around. And then the report essentially became a narrowing of focus, I would say, on the things that are going to matter the most and the hinges that are going to swing the biggest doors for us here at Trek. and then finding the leadership in every single one of those departments and just presenting the findings. And it was incredible because we didn't have to ask anybody. They just looked at it and said, this needs to change. This is what I think we can do in the near term. This is what I think we can do in the long term. And then it took a little bit of, some of those things we needed to push a little further. But I'd say for the most part, it was an incredible team effort.
So that's, you go through this effort of producing this audit or conducting this audit and producing this report that includes your 10-step process to make Trek Bikes a more sustainable organization. That's a lot of work in itself, but then, that's not the end of the journey. So you got to, in order to keep yourself accountable to meeting those goals and the what you've set for yourself, talk about how Trek is kind of measuring the progress of its sustainability efforts and how it's tracking towards its overall goals.
Well, I think for us, we needed a baseline. We didn't know even where we were starting. And I think that was the beautiful thing about the audit, is to understand exactly what is our starting position. And it's kind of like a bike ride. You don't know, if you don't know where you're going, or you don't know where you are, then you have no idea where you're going. And so we had to find out where we are. That had to happen. And from there, it really became this process of, what is it that we're already making progress on? What are we going to do next? And what is going to be measurable for us? I know that there's a lot of talk out there about being net zero and being carbon neutral. And I think those are incredible things. But for us, it was really much more of a process of understanding, like, okay, well, what's actually actionable for us? We're not going to go out and say that we're going to be a carbon neutral company within the next 9 years without actually having a plan for that. And I hope it's somewhere that I hope we get there. I honestly do. And I think that if we can continue to influence infrastructure projects, and we can continue to help more people ride bikes more often, then we will actually have not just become carbon neutral, we will actually have replaced the amount of carbon that it took to make all of the bikes by a factor of much higher than just neutrality. And then it's just finding out where those significant measurables are. We did a big packaging study as part of this, and we realized that if you take a look at bikes do not come assembled. They come to a retailer or a customer in some places. They in a number of different pieces, and those pieces have to be built up, and those pieces have to be wrapped in something so that they arrive at the retailer showroom ready and undamaged. And that in the past has required a massive amount of plastic and single-use items and things that are not recyclable and things that are very hard on the environment. Well, a couple of years ago, our packaging department had already kind of begun the process of unwinding that. They just needed the permission and kind of the nudge, I guess, a little bit to say, no, you need to turn this on to, this needs to be the big thing that you guys are chasing as a packaging department. And then because the nice thing about that is they're able to quantify that. And then we can actually say, yeah, we removed X amount per pounds of plastic that we're not even using anymore from our bike boxes. And so for us, it was not just finding what can we do, it's also finding the measurables and the metrics and the things that matter most so that we can go back and actually take a look at how we've done.
So in addition to producing this sustainability report, Trek also announced, and I alluded to this at the opening, the launch of the Trek Foundation. So tell us a little bit about that initiative and what the company is looking to accomplish with the Trek Foundation.
For many years, Trek has really been passionate about essentially not just providing bikes for people to ride, but also protecting and ensuring that there is space in which to ride bikes. We know that the number one barrier for most people for not riding as much as they want to or could is that they don't have a safe space to do so. Our roads are not necessarily built around cyclists or sustainable transportation as it is right now. In many countries in Europe and in other places that it's a little bit different, but in the United States, for the most part, it's not. And so what the Trek Foundation is going to do is it's going to essentially, at its launch at least, look for different trail projects that we can help fund and actually help protect that space and essentially make sure that there is space near people in which to ride safely for, so that you can actually not just buy a bike for enjoyment, but you actually have a nice place where you can actually still do it. And in that effort of protecting trails and funding different trail projects, you also have a lot of land protection. These spaces are wide spaces. We're talking about, places where there's mountain bike trails, and if you can imagine that, it's forests and it's protecting, the natural environment to make sure that it's not developed or that it's not going to go to some other use. And if you want to take a look at like carbon sequestration, or carbon mitigation, there is really no better thing that's ever been invented than a tree for taking carbon dioxide out of an air. And it's an incredible tragedy, the amount of trees and forests and natural spaces that we've lost over the past few years, especially even with the wildfires this year. Mm-hmm. But essentially, the Trek Foundation wants to make sure that those spaces are protected and funded, and that people with big dreams and trail projects have a place to go when they need help or they need support.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the next question, Eric, in terms of you're providing that environment that makes the use of your product conducive to the end customer, the Trek bicycle bike rider. So tell us a little bit about, that customer and how their feedback and how their interactions and what you're hearing from, cyclists has influenced Trek's efforts to become a more sustainable organization.
Mm-hmm. For us, it's the big thing is we hear it all the time. I would ride my bike more if only I felt safe doing it, or if only my road wasn't as busy, or if only there were wider bike lanes or more space for bikes. That's really a giant piece of the feedback that we get. And it's something, because I would say that we're a family of cyclists. Trek is an interesting place in that it's filled with people who absolutely love interacting with the product, whether it's, family bike rides, or people are passionate about mountain biking. We've got road bike races. We run the gamut here. But the thing that I think binds all of us is this deep-seated sense of responsibility for providing a safe environment, as safe as we can get, and providing and working for more infrastructure and making sure that people have safe places to ride. Because at the end of the day, that's the feedback that we get. People love their bikes. They love riding their bikes. They just don't always love where they have to ride the bikes. And when we take a look again at what our carbon is and what Trek's real impact can be, that's really where we think we can make the biggest influence in not just Trek's, but in people throughout the world, their carbon responsibility as well. If we can just help you live a more sustainable life, if we can give you the opportunity to ride your bike more, well, then that is essentially sustainability.
So then finally, Eric, specific to you and your team, marketers at Trek, how are you promoting these sustainability efforts to, both not only satisfy and retain your existing customers, but also use it as a tool to acquire new customers to the brand? There's been, so much talk around, consumers now are making decisions on more than just price and product quality, that they really want to feel that the company that they're doing business with, shares common values that they do, and they kind of have that moral connection between the two. Tell us a little bit about, the marketing effort behind getting this word out about all that Trek is doing to make itself more sustainable.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that more people are investing in companies that they can feel connections with on a deeper level than just the product interaction. And in that effort, what we want to do is we really wanted to use the report, and really we wanted to use our promotional efforts around the report, not only to just educate people about what Trek's doing, but also really to help inspire the rest of the industry and to help inspire anybody really that's out there that's interested in what companies are doing and what they can do themselves. I think one of the most interesting things about the report and about our process that we came to is we actually came up with this very small equation. And essentially what it is it takes the average amount of carbon dioxide that it takes to manufacture a bike based upon our baseline research. Then you multiply that out across how many miles the average gallon of gas gets and how much carbon is emitted by that gallon of gas. And what we found is that it actually takes, on average, 430 miles of a person riding a bike to replacing a car. So if you're riding 430 miles that you would normally take with a car and you replace that with a bike, you have essentially made your bike carbon neutral. And I think that's one of the missing pieces that companies with sustainability reports and talking about their own corporate responsibility have kind of missed out on, is how do you engage your customers? How can you actually get this incredible community that you're building, that you're a part of, involved in not just your corporate responsibility or your corporate sustainability, but just sustainability just in general. And so 430 is going to be a number that we're going to rally around, and we're going to put a lot of investment in the next couple of years to just educate people around this really simple idea. And whether that's working on ride challenges or working with our retailers to make sure that people have that and in our communications and in our website and in our product interactions and our post-purchase product interactions, we want to make sure that people understand that there's a goal here, that if you do want to live that life and you do want to actually make that product completely carbon neutral, all you have to do is replace 430 miles. So I think it's not just in the report, but also in the pieces of the report that we feel are really actionable and are really exciting, and we feel that customers would really rally around. And the next thing that we really are excited about is really activating our retailers around this. Trek is blessed with an incredible network of retailers throughout the country. So Trek is really a part of a lot of different communities, whether it's a Trek store, or whether it's Wheel and Sprocket in Milwaukee, or whether it's your local bike shop. We want to make sure that our retailers have the tools that they need and to help in their local communities and kind of make those places more sustainable. And the response we've gotten from our retailers has been incredible. And they're just as fired up as people inside the building and inside the Trek family to help make a big difference and make a big change.
Great. Well, that's some great information. This is really brought to light all the great work that Trek Bicycle is doing as it prepares to continue to make itself a more sustainable organization and improve the lives of so many. So thank you for joining me today, Eric.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcast for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
Join us for this year's Women in Retail Leadership Summit, being held October 11th to the 13th. Go to womeninretailsummit.com for our full event safety plan and to register to attend. We can't wait to see you there.